Hey everyone, this is Scott from Forgot to Grow Up. Welcome to our Legion Season 3, Episode 3 Thoughts video. Just finished watching the latest episode of Legion. I'm just going to be sharing my general thoughts on the episode. In this episode, we see David uses Switch's ability so that he can go see how his parents met and what led to him being infected by, or possessed by the Shadow King Farouk. And so I really enjoyed this episode because we get a kind of this different version of Charles Xavier than we've seen in the movies and even from most of the comics for the most part. From what I know of the comics, I haven't really read that many X-Men comics. But that being said, I thought that was a pretty interesting kind of concept to both see them and to see like a different iteration. We get a little mini Cerebro that he had built, and we see he's not quite at that same Professor X that we've seen in at least the movies and the X-Men animated series. So I kind of enjoyed that. I was a little confused at first because I wasn't sure if it was his parents at first. I think his mom says Charles at one point, but I also didn't quite hear it. I was watching on Chromecast, so I didn't want to go back, and so it was a whole thing. So I wasn't sure for a good chunk of this episode if it was actually his parents or not. And then obviously as the episode unfolds, we get a little bit more confirmation on that. But yeah, I really thought it was an interesting concept, seeing it, and the fact that we spend the whole episode focusing on it. It was weird that we didn't get a little bit more information about how Switch was using her ability in this way. Last episode, David wasn't able to go into her hallway. In this episode, it seems like he was able to, or at least mind project. It was a little unclear. Maybe they'll explain a little more in the next episode. But some of the interesting things we did see with his parents, we did see that they had also met in an asylum, which is a fun little kind of tie to David and Sid. We also saw, like I mentioned, a little kind of mini Cerebro, which he had used, which is how he found Farouk, and which led to, Legion. And then we also saw that they had also given him the angriest boy in the world toy, or a doll. So that was just an interesting kind of like nod to the first season. Mainly just the first season. So that was a fun little nod. It was interesting to see that David's mom seemed to have been questioning her own sanity with, hearing David's voice while he was, doing the time travel thing, which I thought was interesting. It was kind of interesting to think, is he changing the past, or did this always happen with his mom? Did his mom always, not quite, did his mom always question her sanity because she had always heard David's voice, because he always has visited her and done that. So it's a little interesting concept. The fact, and she was also kind of being haunted by Farouk. It seemed, or Farouk trying to get into David, which is the thing we also see at the end of this episode, that just as Charles is there apparently as it happens, and so it was a little bit, I don't want to say anticlimactic because it just kind of happened. But it was kind of interesting to see what kind of led to it. For the most part, it would have been interesting to see a little bit more, maybe Farouk and, maybe Charles Xavier's kind of fight, to see how that played a little bit more. But it was interesting to kind of follow his mom and see kind of how that played out. But yeah, that's pretty much all my thoughts on this episode of Legion. I'm sure let me know in the comments below what you thought about this episode. Did you like their portrayal of Charles Xavier? Sure, let me know. Thanks again for joining me today. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and have a good one.